They thought humiliating him would be funny. A substitute teacher pointed at the only black student in class. Solve this in front of everyone. What followed wasn't failure, but flawless genius. But instead of applause, he was marked aggressive and dragged out by security. So why did the school really punish him, and what they never expected to be revealed live, in front of millions? Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The hallway smelled like dry erase markers and cafeteria grease. It was third period physics at Rivington High, and the regular teacher, Mr. Huxley, was out on sick leave. The classroom buzzed with the kind of anticipation only teenagers could conjure when structure fell away. Students leaned back in their chairs, some scrolling their phones under the desk, others whispering about homecoming. Then the door creaked open. In walked a man none of them had seen before. Tall, maybe mid-40s, hair graying at the temples, crisp navy blazer, with elbow patches, the type that tried too hard. He walked like he owned the room, shoulders squared, a leather briefcase swinging beside his knee. His eyes scanned the room in one slow arc, and for a moment, the talking died down. He dropped the briefcase on the desk with a thud. "I'm Mr. Denton," he said, voice sharp like ice cracking. "And yes, I know I'm not Mr. Huxley. No, I don't care what worksheets he left. We're doing things my way." A few students exchanged amused glances. Mr. Denton leaned against the whiteboard, one hand in his pocket, studying the class like a casting director searching for a villain. "Let's see what kind of minds I'm dealing with," he said. Then he smiled. Not a warm smile, but the kind that says something mean is about to follow. "You there?" He pointed. All eyes turned. Row 3, second seat from the window. 17-year-old Malik James, hoodie drawn halfway over his head, earbuds tucked just out of sight. He blinked once, slow and unsure. "Me?" he said, removing the buds. "Yes, you. The one pretending not to be here, front and center." Laughter rippled across the room. Malik stayed frozen for a beat. He wasn't known to speak much. He got A's without drawing attention. He was the kind of student teachers either loved or forgot. But today, silence wasn't protection. Mr. Denton motioned again. "Come up to the board. Let's test your brain." Malik rose slowly, his heart pounding against his ribs like fists on a locked door. The walk to the front felt like a plank walk, every step weighed down by stairs. He could hear a whisper from behind. Why he pick Malik though? Mr. Denton was already scribbling on the board. A long equation sprawled across it in blue marker. A complex projectile motion problem with multiple variables, one Malik had seen versions of before but not quite like this. "Solve this. Show all your steps," Mr. Denton said, capping the marker. Malik looked at it, his brain shifting gears. But it wasn't confusion that made him pause. It was something else. Something colder. He glanced at Mr. Denton. Their eyes locked for half a second. There was something smug in the man's expression. This wasn't about physics. This was a performance, a game, a message to the room. "Let's see if the black kid knows anything." Malik didn't speak. He just stared at the problem. He could feel the pressure building behind him, eyes watching, breaths held, and somewhere in the corner a phone camera already recording. Mr. Denton broke the silence. "Any time now, Mr. James, or would you prefer we call someone else? Maybe someone who came prepared today." It wasn't the words. It was the tone. The way he said prepared didn't feel academic. It felt like a sneer, a push, a trap designed to embarrass. Denton folded his arms, as if expecting Malik to fail in real time, right in front of the room, in front of phones, in front of proof. Malik looked at the marker Denton had left on the ledge beneath the board, then back at the equation. The voices in the room had gone quiet. Some smirked, some just watched, others squirmed in their chairs, sensing something wasn't right, but unsure what to do. It would have been easier to sit back down, to shrug and mumble, to be what Denton clearly expected, a quiet black kid who couldn't keep up. But Malik didn't move toward his seat. He reached for the marker, slowly, deliberately, and lifted it. But the teen doesn't just stay quiet. He picks up the chalk. Malik's fingers trembled slightly as he uncapped the blue marker. The squeak of plastic against the board echoed louder than any voice in the room. 30 eyes tracked his every movement. Some waited to see him fumble, others wanted him to surprise them, but most simply waited for confirmation, that the teacher's assumption was right. The equation stretched across the board like a dare, a projectile launched from a height, a velocity vector angled against gravity, a tangle of sine, cosine, and air resistance. Malik recognized it instantly, but it wasn't the formula that made his jaw tighten. It was the reason he'd been chosen. Behind him, a snicker broke the silence. Then another. "Man, he's gonna choke," someone whispered. Mr. Denton stood by the teacher's desk, arms folded, chin raised slightly, watching like a referee waiting to blow the whistle. He tapped his pen against the desk rhythmically, his smirk barely contained. "Take your time," he said, voice dripping with mock patience. "Physics can be complicated." Malik didn't answer. He drew a single line on the board, a clean horizontal baseline. Then another, and another. His handwriting was small, precise, confident. He was already rearranging variables before the laughter had fully died down. "Height equals initial height plus velocity times time," he murmured, half to himself. It was the kind of quiet focus that didn't seek approval. His mind had slipped into a rhythm that felt familiar, safe, even. The numbers and symbols began to move like gears, sinking into place. Behind him, the giggles faded. "Wait," a voice whispered. "He actually knows this stuff." Malik's marker squeaked as he substituted values. His body loosened, confidence building as the pieces aligned. When he found the missing term in the teacher's flawed setup, a misused sign convention, he erased it without hesitation and rewrote the expression. The pen in Mr. Denton's hand stopped tapping. He stepped forward. "Hold on. Why'd you change that?" Malik didn't turn around. "Because you set the origin at the wrong point." His tone was calm, factual, like he was stating the weather. "If the projectile starts above ground level, the sign for gravity reverses when velocity decreases." The class blinked. Even the whisperers froze. Someone whispered, "What?" Mr. Denton adjusted his tie. "That's an advanced interpretation. We usually keep it simple here." Malik nodded, writing again. "That's why people get it wrong." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with surprise. He filled the last two lines of the derivation, boxed the final equation neatly, and stepped back. Mr. Denton walked closer, scanning the board, eyes darting through the calculations. He hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough for everyone to see. He didn't get it. The realization flickered across his face like a glitch in his confidence. He tried to hide it with authority. "Well," he said, forcing a chuckle, "you memorized that one, didn't you?" Malik turned around. "No," he said quietly. "You made a mistake in your setup." The air left the room. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Polite, measured, but cutting. The kind of truth that couldn't be deflected. "Excuse me?" Denton said, his voice tightening. "You assumed zero air resistance," Malik continued, his voice steady. "But the question says it's accounted for. That changes everything." A few students leaned forward. Phones were being lifted discreetly again. This time, not for mockery, but to capture something unexpected. The teacher's face flushed. "That's irrelevant. We don't need to overcomplicate simple classroom examples." Malik capped the marker. "Then why write it like that?" Silent. Someone whispered, "Yo," under their breath. For a second, no one moved. Then one student, the same one who'd laughed the loudest, let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Not mocking this time. Impressed. Mr. Denton's jaw tightened. He took a deep breath, forcing his composure. "Fine," he said. "If you're such a genius, why don't you solve the second part, the velocity at impact, without assuming constant acceleration?" Malik didn't flinch. He turned back to the board and began writing again. Faster this time. His movements were clean, efficient. There was no hesitation, no guesswork. He'd done this before, alone in notebooks, late at night when equations felt like puzzles, instead of burdens. Physics wasn't a subject to him. It was a language, one that made sense when the world didn't. The class watched as his logic unfolded. Step by step. No mistakes. No pauses. Within minutes he derived a differential equation that even Mr. Huxley, their regular teacher, would have needed a reference book to check. Someone whispered, "Holy crap." Another said, "He's actually good." Malik didn't turn around. He finished the last step, boxed the answer, and put the marker down. When he turned, Mr. Denton's face was unreadable. "Done," Malik said simply. The teacher stared at the board, lips tightening. He couldn't correct him. He didn't dare, but he also couldn't admit defeat. Not to a student, and certainly not to this student. He gave a short, dismissive laugh. Well, that's creative. But you're missing a few real-world considerations. Perhaps next time you can stick to what's expected. Instead of showing off, it was a weak shot. But it landed. The laughter that followed wasn't aimed at Malik anymore. It was aimed at the teacher. Small, hesitant chuckles at first, then spreading like sparks. Even the quiet ones couldn't hide their smirks. Mr. Denton's face turned red. That's enough, he snapped. Everyone, quiet down. Malik stepped aside, heading back to his seat. He didn't look proud. He didn't smile. He just looked tired. But something changed in that walk back. The same students who'd laughed when he stood up now watched him like he was someone else entirely. Respect wasn't the right word. It was realization. They had misjudged him. Mr. Denton cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Let's move on, he said stiffly. Open your textbooks to chapter 5. The rustling of pages filled the silence, but no one was really reading. Their eyes kept flicking between the board, the teacher and Malik, who sat quietly, notebook open, pretending to follow along. When the bell finally rang, the sound hit like a release. Chairs scraped, backpacks zipped, murmurs filled the air. Malik gathered his things quickly, keeping his head down, but as he closed his notebook, something slipped loose, a folded piece of paper that fluttered to the floor. He didn't notice, but the girl sitting beside him, Lena, the one who'd recorded everything, did. She bent to pick it up before he could. It wasn't a regular piece of paper. Her eyes widened. In the corner was a small, distinct blue crest, a logo. Princeton University, Department of Astrophysics. She looked up at him, stunned. Malik, what is this? He froze, eyes darting from the paper to her. The color drained from his face. It's nothing, he said quickly, reaching for it. But Lena didn't hand it over right away. You got accepted? She whispered. To Princeton. Heads turned. A few students still packing up stopped mid-motion. The air shifted again. Confusion, awe, disbelief. Malik took the paper gently, folded it and tucked it back into his notebook without a word. Mr. Denton, still gathering his things at the desk, looked up at the sudden silence. What's going on back there? No one answered. Malik slung his backpack over his shoulder, eyes on the floor. The bell's echo faded. Then softly, almost too quiet to hear, he said, You'll find out soon enough. A hidden note falls out of his notebook, one with a Princeton logo on it. By the time Malik returned to class the next day, the video had spread across 4 social platforms and racked up thousands of views. The caption was simple. Sub tries to humiliate black student with physics question, ends up getting schooled. The footage wasn't grainy or edited. It was raw. Lena's phone had caught everything. The equation, the confrontation, and Malik's quiet dismantling of the substitute teacher's setup. The clip ended on Mr. Denton's face, blank with confusion, before cutting to black. It was all over Snapchat, on TikTok, even Twitter, where a thread comparing Malik's derivation to MIT-level problem solving had gone viral overnight. The comment sections buzzed with disbelief, admiration and fury. But in room 3B, at Rivington High, the energy told a different story. Malik stepped in, wearing the same navy hoodie, his backpack slung low, head slightly bowed, but this time the silence that followed wasn't the stillness of dismissal. It was something closer to reverence. The students watched him like he was no longer just Malik James. He was a living contradiction to every assumption they'd ever made. Proof that excellence doesn't always come with loudness or labels. But not everyone was applauding. Mr. Denton was back, and the look in his eyes was different now. Gone was the smug, playful tone. Today his jaw was tight, his grip on the dry erase marker a little too firm, his movements rigid, rehearsed. He didn't acknowledge Malik when he walked in, didn't nod, didn't speak. He simply turned to the board and began writing as if nothing had happened the day before. But everyone in the room felt the difference. The class opened with a lab demonstration, nothing unusual. Denton had chosen a projectile launcher, the kind that fired a small metal ball into a foam target. He asked the class to predict the landing point, using kinematic equations. He glanced briefly at Malik, but said nothing. Malik stayed quiet, notebook open, doing the calculations before anyone else had uncapped their pens. When Denton asked for predictions, Malik raised his hand, hesitantly, respectfully. Denton ignored him, called on someone else. And when the result turned out wrong, Malik gently offered the correction under his breath, just loud enough for nearby students to hear. He's right, Lena said. Malik already figured it out. Still no acknowledgement from Denton. His jaw worked in silence. By fourth period, the tension had thickened. Malik's notebook was already filled with correct answers, annotated examples, and even alternate methods. It was clear to everyone, this wasn't about Malik showing off. It was just who he was. But Mr. Denton was unraveling. During a group activity, he walked behind Malik's desk slowly, like a cop on patrol. His eyes scanned Malik's notes, then narrowed. He stopped. "What's this?" he asked flatly, picking up Malik's notebook without warning. Malik froze. The class went quiet. Denton flipped through the pages, then paused on a diagram, one Malik had drawn that morning. It showed the derivation of a velocity curve for variable acceleration, using Euler's method. It wasn't from the textbook. It wasn't even standard curriculum. "Did you copy this?" Denton asked, holding the page up like evidence. Malik frowned. "No. I worked it out at home." "From where?" "From my notes," he replied calmly, "and a few online journals." Denton raised an eyebrow. "Journals?" A few students looked at each other, uncomfortable. "Yes," Malik said. "I read research journals sometimes. From the Princeton Open Lab. And you expect me to believe that?" Malik stared at him, caught off guard. "Yes." Denton closed the notebook with a snap. "That's very advanced material for a high school student. Especially one who... Especially one who what?" The silence screamed a word he wouldn't say aloud. "Especially one like you." Lena's jaw clenched. "You're seriously accusing him of cheating?" "I didn't say that," Denton replied quickly. "But it is unusual." "Unusual how?" Another student piped up. "Because you don't get it, and he does?" Denton stiffened. He walked back to the front of the room and scribbled a fresh problem on the board, something obscure and layered, pulling from concepts not yet covered. "All right," he said. "Since Mr. James is so well-read, perhaps he can explain this." He stepped aside, inviting Malik up like a prosecutor handing over a witness. Malik didn't move. Lena whispered, "You don't have to do this." But he stood anyway. He didn't speak as he walked forward, just picked up the marker and looked at the question. It was a trap. He could see that immediately. The phrasing was misleading. The variables undefined. The question was written to fail. So he rewrote it. He erased the misleading terms, clarified the conditions, then solved the refined version, step by step. It took less than 5 minutes. When he finished, he turned around and returned to his seat. No one clapped. No one laughed. They just watched Mr. Denton. The man said nothing. His lips parted slightly, as if about to speak, but the words never came. Instead, he walked back to his desk and opened his gradebook. "Let's move on," he said coldly. By the end of the period, Malik's name had been highlighted in red. He noticed it as he walked past the teacher's laptop. He saw the notation. One word. Cheating. He stopped. Turned. "What does that mean?" Denton looked up, feigning confusion. "What? You marked me for cheating?" The room froze again. Denton's voice was even. Too even. "We take academic integrity seriously here. I've noticed inconsistencies in your work. It doesn't reflect prior assessments." "Because no one asked me before," Malik said. "You never gave me a chance." "I gave you several," Denton replied, eyes locked, "and your sudden mastery combined with questionable resources raises concerns." "I didn't cheat," Malik said, voice steady, but lower now. "I've been studying this since I was 13. "That's convenient," Denton said, reaching for his walkie. "But unfortunately, I need to file a report. District policy. I'm also required to notify administration and security." Malik blinked. "Security?" Denton clicked the side of the walkie. "Protocol." Several students gasped. "You're calling security on him for being smart?" Lena said, her voice sharp. "That's not what's happening," Denton said, already speaking into the device. "Room 3B. I need an escort. Possible academic violation. Student becoming disruptive." "Disruptive?" Malik's voice cracked slightly now, not from rage, but disbelief. Students looked around in stunned silence. Phones rose again. "Sit down, Malik," Denton said coolly. "We'll sort this with administration." But Malik didn't sit. He stood, shoulders tense, eyes wide, not in defiance, but in quiet devastation. It was happening again. The same story. Different day. You're punishing me for being better than you, he whispered. Denton's jaw twitched. The door opened. Two men in navy jackets stepped in. School security. They looked confused at first, then glanced at Malik, then at the teacher. Escort him to the office, Denton said, not meeting Malik's eyes. Wait, what'd he do? One of the guards asked, sensing something wasn't right. I'll explain it there, Denton said flatly. Just take him. Malik's bag was still at his desk. He moved to grab it, shoulders stiff. Leave the bag, Denton said. Malik didn't argue. He just walked, slowly, silently, toward the hallway. His classmates watched, stunned. Some tried to speak, but no one moved fast enough. As he disappeared down the corridor, Lena stood up and shouted after him. Malik, we've got your back. This isn't over. He didn't turn around. The teacher marks him down for cheating and calls security. The hallway outside room 3B felt colder than usual, lit by flickering fluorescents that buzzed louder than they should have. Malik walked between the two security guards, his footsteps nearly silent, but the sound of their boots on the tile echoed with heavy implication. One walked slightly ahead, the other behind, like an unspoken barrier. Neither of them touched him, but they didn't have to. The message was clear. You're being removed. He wasn't resisting. He didn't even ask why, because he already knew. He kept his gaze fixed ahead, past the trophy case lined with grinning faces of debate winners and science fair champions, none of which looked like his. The hallway was empty, but he could feel the weight of eyes anyway. Classrooms on either side had windows. Faces peered through some, barely moving the blinds. Mr. Denton followed at a distance, not saying a word, just watching, like a man quietly proud of the mess he'd made. In the office, the assistant principal, Miss Caro, was already waiting, a clipboard in one hand, a look of vague annoyance in the other. She didn't greet him. She just motioned to the seat in front of her desk. Sit. Malik sat. The security guards lingered at the door. Denton stood behind them, arms crossed. Why don't you tell me what happened? Miss Caro asked. Malik looked up. He accused me of cheating. Did you cheat? No. She gave a dry sigh and flipped through the papers on her desk. Mr. Denton says you were disruptive, that you created confusion in the classroom, challenged his instruction, and refused to follow protocol. I solved the problem. You embarrassed a teacher, she corrected flatly. Malik blinked. So, solving a problem is now disruption? You didn't follow classroom structure, and you refused to sit when directed. I answered what he put on the board, and he refused to believe I did it myself. Denton stepped forward. He had notes with university-level material. It was suspicious. Miss Caro nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something she already believed. Do you have those notes, Malik? No. They're in my backpack.
And where's that?
In the classroom.
Well, she said, clasping her hands, until we can confirm whether or not your work was original, we're going to proceed with a temporary suspension. Malik's stomach dropped.
What?
This will allow us time to review your academic record, your notebooks, and assess whether there's been an academic violation. You'll be allowed back once the matter's resolved. But I didn't do anything wrong. Miss Caro leaned forward. You were removed from class by security. That alone justifies disciplinary review. He sat there stunned, not angry, just hollow, like the air had been knocked from his chest without impact. She pushed a paper across the desk. You'll need a parent or guardian to sign this before it's finalized. I'm not signing that. Then your mother will. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. You'll wait in the front office until she arrives. I've already called her. Mr. Denton offered a slight nod to Caro before exiting. His job done. The door closed behind him with a final click. Like the end of a sentence Malik didn't get to finish. He sat in the same spot for the next 30 minutes, saying nothing. 37 minutes later, the glass doors opened, and his mother walked in. Mariah James, 41, sharp in both style and speech, the kind of woman who could shut down a conference room with one sentence. Her heels clicked hard across the office floor. Her eyes found him immediately. Malik. He stood, hands still shaking slightly. They said I was suspended. Her expression barely changed, but her breath caught. Why? Before he could answer, Miss Caro emerged from the hallway. Mrs. James, thank you for coming. I didn't come. I was summoned, she replied coolly, and I'd like an explanation before I sign anything. In my office, Caro gestured. Malik followed his mother inside. the door closing again behind them. The silence in that room wasn't neutral. It hummed with restraint. Carol cleared her throat. Your son's behavior has raised serious academic concerns. He was found with advanced material not consistent with the current curriculum and exhibited non-compliance during class activities. Mariah tilted her head. Non-compliance? He was defiant, confrontational. He solved a physics problem. He disrupted the learning environment. By being right? Caro bristled. He embarrassed the substitute teacher, and that behavior has consequences. Mariah's voice dropped. You called me out of work, made my son sit in this office for almost an hour, and labeled him disruptive because he embarrassed a grown man by being smarter than him. We are still investigating whether the material was his original work. He's been building equations in his notebooks since he was 9. Without instructor confirmation, that's difficult to verify. Mariah's voice was calm but clipped. You're punishing him for your lack of imagination. Caro sighed. I understand your frustration, but… No, you don't, Mariah said, standing. You don't understand anything. You don't understand what it's like to raise a brilliant black boy in a world that assumes every achievement is stolen, unless it's spoon-fed from an approved syllabus. You don't understand the harm of treating his excellence like a threat. The room fell silent. Caro reached into a file folder and pulled out a letter. This is the formal suspension. 1 day, pending investigation. Mariah took it, scanned the page, and then froze. Her eyes narrowed. What is this line? She asked, pointing near the bottom. Caro looked uncomfortable. That's a standard notation. It says potential falsification of academic credentials. It's just a placeholder while we gather more. Mariah stood sharply. You're accusing my son of forging his education? We're not accusing. Yes, you are. That's what this line means. That's what you'll file. That's what will follow him. Caro looked down. It's a necessary classification in the system. For who? Mariah asked. You think if a white kid had handed in a college-level derivation, you'd be calling it falsification? The silence answered for her. Mariah's hands trembled as she folded the paper and tucked it into her purse. We're leaving. I need you to sign. No, you don't. We'll see you after we speak to the superintendent. Caro's mouth parted slightly, unsure whether to push harder. But Mariah was already walking out. Malik followed, still silent. The entire front office watched them leave. Neither of them looked back. In the car, Malik finally spoke. I didn't cheat. I know, Mariah said softly, gripping the steering wheel. I never doubted that. He stared out the window. Why does it always feel like I have to prove I belong? Mariah didn't answer right away. Then, gently, because the world built these systems without you in mind, and when you disrupt them, they panic. I didn't mean to embarrass him. You didn't embarrass him, she said. He embarrassed himself. You just happened to be the proof. Back at home, Malik went straight to his room. He didn't turn on music, didn't open his laptop. He just sat on the edge of his bed, the suspension letter beside him, unread but unforgettable. He thought about the equation he solved, about the class's silence, about Denton's fate. He thought about how fast brilliance can turn into suspicion when it wears the wrong skin. On his desk sat a stack of notebooks, filled with sketches, theories, solved problems, and ideas no one had ever asked to see. For years he'd kept them to himself, not out of fear but habit. He had learned early that being quiet kept people comfortable, but maybe comfort wasn't the point anymore. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Everyone's talking about it. They're mad. Like, really mad. Don't let them silence you. Another buzz.
And Malik, I think you should see what the teacher posted.
His heart skipped. He opened the attached screenshot. It was a post from a private Facebook group, a teacher's forum. A comment from someone named David Denton. Some kids come in acting like they're geniuses. They Google a few formulas and think they're smarter than the people trying to teach them. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know the difference between talent and arrogance. And let's just say, this one fits a certain profile. Malik's blood ran cold. His mother walked in moments later, holding her phone. You saw it? He nodded, jaw tight. She handed him a printed copy of the suspension letter again. I'm not letting this go, Malik. They want to question your intelligence? Let's make them question their own bias. He looked up at her, eyes burning but dry. Then let's show them everything I know. His mother receives a suspension letter with a disturbing accusation. The next morning, the air inside the James household was heavy. The kind of quiet that didn't come from peace, but from tension too thick to name. The suspension letter sat on the dining table between Malik and his mother, creased from being handled too many times. The words on it had already burned themselves into memory. Aggressive behavior, disruptive conduct, potential falsification of academic material. Mariah's eyes traced the lines again, as if daring them to change. They didn't. Across from her, Malik stirred his cereal without eating it. The spoon clinked against the bowl every few seconds, each sound louder than the last. He finally broke the silence. Aggressive? His voice cracked slightly, caught between disbelief and exhaustion. I didn't even raise my voice. Mariah exhaled slowly, rubbing her temples. They don't need you to raise your voice, baby. You just have to make them uncomfortable. He looked at her, confusion flickering behind the hurt. For solving a problem? For being smarter than the man who wrote it, she said flatly. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, shaking the blinds. The noise broke the stillness for a second. Then it fell again, quiet, tense, deliberate. Mariah stood, pacing the kitchen. You know what's worse? I called the district office this morning. They said the suspension is under review, but the phrasing stays until they finish their investigation. She turned to him. Do you know what that means on paper? Malik nodded faintly. It means they'll never unsee it. Exactly. She sat back down, the fire in her voice turning cold. This is how they do it. They don't say dangerous. They say defiant. They don't say angry. They say aggressive. She pointed to the page. Every coded word on that form was written to justify fear. Malik looked down at his hands, flexing them as though searching for the aggression everyone else saw. They didn't shake. They didn't clench. They just existed. Steady, brown, harmless. I was polite, he said quietly. I didn't yell. I didn't even argue. I just answered. Mariah nodded. And that's what terrifies them. Later that day, she drove him to the district office for their scheduled review. The parking lot was half empty, the sky a pale gray that matched the mood. Inside, the air smelled faintly of copier toner and lemon disinfectant. The receptionist, a woman with tight curls and tight lips, asked for their names without looking up. Mariah and Malik James, Mariah said firmly. Meeting with Superintendent Alvarez. The woman's eyes flicked up briefly, then back down. Take a seat. She'll be with you shortly. They waited nearly 30 minutes before the office door opened. Superintendent Alvarez, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and rimless glasses, gestured for them to enter. Her tone was warm, but her words weren't. Mrs. James, Malik, thank you for coming in. I understand this has been upsetting. Mariah gave a tight smile. That's one word for it. Alvarez folded her hands. We've spoken to Mr. Denton. He feels that Malik's behavior in class created an environment of hostility. His exact words were combative and disrespectful. Mariah's brow furrowed. He solved a math problem. That's hostility now. Mr. Denton believes Malik's tone was challenging. Mariah leaned forward. Tone or color? The superintendent stiffened slightly. We don't tolerate discrimination here. Then explain this, Mariah said, pulling the suspension letter from her bag and laying it flat on the desk. Aggressive, disruptive, falsification. None of those describe what happened. They describe how he made someone feel. Malik sat still, eyes on the edge of the paper, not the woman across from him. Alvarez sighed. Perception matters, Mrs. James. Teachers must maintain authority in the classroom. When that's challenged, authority? Mariah interrupted, her voice rising slightly. My son didn't challenge authority. He challenged incompetence. The superintendent's eyes narrowed. Mrs. James. No. Mariah continued. Let's be honest. You've got a black kid who understands advanced physics. That doesn't fit the story you expect. So you label him to make the data match your bias. You can't imagine he's exceptional, so you make him dangerous. A pause. For a moment, Alvarez's composure cracked. I assure you, race has nothing to do with our... It always has something to do with it, Mariah said quietly. Malik looked up then, meeting Alvarez's gaze. His voice was steady but soft. If I was wrong, he would have laughed. If I was right, he'd be impressed. But he was scared. That landed. The superintendent looked away. We'll conduct a full review, she said finally. You'll receive an update within 72 hours. Good, Mariah said, standing. Because if we don't, you'll receive something else. That night, Malik sat at his desk, staring at the notebook Mr. Denton had called suspicious. His handwriting filled every page, derivations, notes, even his doodles of orbital paths. It wasn't just work, it was memory. Years of curiosity pressed into paper. He opened his laptop and searched his name. He shouldn't have. The clip had gone further than anyone expected. It was on Reddit now, under our public freakout of all places, with a caption that twisted the narrative completely. Student refuses to listen to teacher. Argues aggressively over simple math. Typical. The comments were worse. Probably cheated. Always playing the victim. Another disrespectful kid who'll blame race when he gets expelled. Each word landed like a bruise. The video, cropped and re-edited, made him look combative, like he'd raised his voice, like he'd stormed forward instead of calmly solving the board. The truth had been edited out. He scrolled further. Some people defended him, links to the original video, comments calling out bias, but their voices were drowned by noise. He slammed the laptop shut. Mariah appeared in the doorway. You saw it, didn't you? He nodded, eyes glassy but defiant. They made me look like I was angry. They always do, she said softly. When they can't control the truth, they control the angle. He leaned back, breathing slowly, like he was fighting something rising inside. I shouldn't have gone to the board. I should have just sat there. No, she said, stepping closer. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You were excellent. You were visible. That's what scares them. He didn't respond. Mariah sat beside him, placing a hand over his. You're not the problem, Malik. The problem is, they can't fit you into their system, so they call you a glitch. He looked at her, something flickering behind his tired eyes. What if I don't want to be a glitch anymore? Then break the system, she said. By midnight, the story had taken another turn. A new account surfaced on Twitter, someone claiming to be a student from Rivington High. The post read, "You didn't see what really happened. The teacher was mocking him. Watch this angle." Attached was a 30-second clip, different from the others. It showed the start of the exchange, where Denton had said, maybe someone who actually studied can try this, right before pointing at Malik. The truth was now visible. Within hours, that clip began spreading faster than the first. News accounts picked it up. Hashtags started forming. Let Malik speak. Smart not scary. Rivington High. The tide was shifting. But so was the school's strategy. At 2:07 a.m., an email was sent to all parents from the Rivington administration. We are aware of recent social media posts misrepresenting an internal disciplinary matter. The safety and integrity of our learning environment is our top priority. Certain behaviors, no matter how subtle, can create discomfort or perceived hostility among staff and students. We remain committed to addressing such incidents fairly. Perceived hostility. Mariah read it twice, her anger simmering just beneath her skin. She could hear the coded language echoing in her head. Perceived hostility. Translation. He made the wrong person uncomfortable. She forwarded the email to her lawyer friend from college, with a simple message, "We need to talk." By morning, Malik's face was everywhere. Local news anchors debated the incident at Rivington High. Conservative commentators framed it as another example of disrespectful youth. Activists framed it as a symptom of institutional bias. At school, students were divided, some defending him online, others reposting memes mocking the situation. Lena sent him a message before first bell. They're losing control of the story. Don't disappear now. But Malik didn't feel victorious. He felt exposed. Every scroll, every headline, every ping of his phone reminded him how quickly brilliance can turn into spectacle. He stared at the mirror before school, hoodie up, eyes tired.
Aggressive, disruptive, combative.
Words that didn't belong to him but clung like second skin anyway. He thought of Mr. Denton's smirk, the superintendent's cold detachment, the silent fear that had filled the classroom that day. And for the first time, Malik didn't feel like a student anymore. He felt like evidence. That night, as the world argued about him from behind screens, another clip appeared, uploaded anonymously. It was shaky, grainy, filmed from the back corner of the classroom. But it captured everything Denton didn't want seen. The mockery, the smirk, the line about someone who actually studies. The clip ended with Malik's quiet correction. Then why write it like that? Within minutes, it began spreading again. This time, faster. By dawn it had hit 2 million views. And in every comment section, under every headline, one truth cut through the noise. He hadn't been aggressive. He'd been brilliant. A blurry video of the incident goes viral overnight. Din genius reveal. The morning after the video of Malik went viral, he walked through his neighborhood like a person being seen for the first time. Strangers nodded in recognition. A barista gave him his drink for free. A kid on a bike whispered, "That's him," before speeding off. Online, he was being called everything from a prodigy to a revolutionary. Twitter threads broke down his solution, step by step. Science forums reposted his method. Hashtags like physics kid and want Malik solve it trended regionally. A popular YouTuber called him the real young Sheldon, but black and unbothered. The praise was everywhere, except where it mattered most. Inside Rivington High, the narrative was still bent. The front office staff didn't make eye contact when Malik walked in. His teachers, even the ones who previously smiled at his punctuality, had gone quiet. The principal issued no apology, no recognition, not even a whisper of acknowledgement. Malik sat in homeroom that day with his head low and earbuds in. He wasn't trying to avoid attention. He was avoiding distortion. In the eyes of the system, nothing had changed. The district had issued a statement the night before, one that made no mention of race, bias, or even the teacher's name. It read like legal fog. "We are aware of an incident circulating online involving a classroom interaction. Rivington High is committed to creating safe learning environments for all students and staff."
That was it. Safe for who?
During second period, his guidance counselor, Mrs. Logan, called him into her office. She was the one who had helped him start his Princeton application. The same woman who once said, "You're going to be the first James in the Ivy League." Today she looked nervous, her hands folded over a clipboard. "Malik, I just wanted to check in," she said, her voice too bright. "How are you feeling after all this attention?"
Malik shrugged. Okay.
She nodded. Good, good. Just know that attention like this, it can come with pressure and scrutiny. Not everyone's kind online. He blinked. "I noticed." She hesitated. "Also, about your application. Princeton is extremely competitive. I think it might help if you added a couple safety schools to your list. Just in case." He stared at her. "Because of the video?" No, she said quickly. "It's just realistic planning." He didn't respond. By fourth period, it became clear that the school wasn't just ignoring his moment. They were rewriting it. Mr. Huxley, now back in class, made a vague reference to respecting classroom boundaries before diving into lesson notes. When Malik raised his hand, Huxley skipped him. Twice. In the hallway, someone had written Malik fake on a locker. It wasn't his, but he saw it. In group work, no one volunteered to partner with him, not even the students who had clapped for him online. He had gone from invisible to undeniable and back to inconvenient. Lena found him at lunch. "They're scared of you," she said matter-of-factly. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You did something worse," she said. "You did everything right." He looked at his tray. Untouched food. Lukewarm juice. "They still don't believe it, do they?" "Some do. Some just don't want to say it out loud." He shook his head. "It's easier to call me a liar than admit the truth made them uncomfortable." That night, Mariah scrolled through the latest comments on a reposted clip. Some were positive, supportive, but others darker. Bet he had the answer planted. Why is it always the race card with these people? "I've taught physics for 30 years. No way a high schooler figured that out live." She clicked off the screen and sat in silence for a while, watching her son reread an astrophysics journal at the kitchen table. "I called the school today," she said. "They're not budging. They say there's no disciplinary action on file anymore, but they won't issue a correction, no apology." "They don't need to," Malik said. "They already wrote me out of the narrative." Mariah reached across the table, squeezed his hand. "You don't need their permission to be what you already are." He didn't answer. He just stared out the window. Later that evening, his inbox pinged. Subject: Your work is extraordinary. The sender: Dr. Jalen Monroe, Columbia University, Depth of Theoretical Physics. Malik opened it slowly. "Malik, I saw the video. I saw you, and I recognized someone. The world tried to make me forget. I'd like to talk. Privately. Not as a recruiter. Not even as a professor. As someone who was once told he was too advanced for the space he dared to stand in."
Let's chat. I have a plan.
Malik reread it. Twice. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he typed, "Yes. When?" A Black Ivy League alum reaches out privately with a plan. The message from Dr. Jalen Monroe sat on Malik's screen, like a spark waiting for oxygen. Malik stared at the words. I have a plan as his heart picked up pace. He hesitated for a full minute before replying. What kind of plan? This time, it took longer to get a response. 10 minutes, maybe 15. But when it came, it wasn't a sentence. It was a link. A private Zoom invite. Title Thursday, 7 p.m. No limits. Underneath it a single line. Trust me, you're not the first genius they tried to erase. At exactly 7 p.m. that Thursday, Malik logged in. His palms were damp, but his expression was locked with quiet resolve. His mother, Mariah, stood just outside his room. She wasn't on camera, but she was listening. The screen lit up. Dr. Monroe appeared in a cozy home office. Shelves lined with physics textbooks, framed diplomas, a faded photo of a black boy in a graduation gown. Malik, he said with a smile. Been a long time since I met someone like you. Malik leaned forward. Someone like what? Dangerously brilliant, Monroe replied. And I say dangerous, because this country doesn't know what to do with a smart black boy. Not in classrooms built to contain them. Malik didn't know what to say. He'd never heard it phrased that way before. Monroe didn't wait for a response. I was 17 when I got my first suspension. Same reason solved a problem a tenured teacher didn't understand. Suddenly I was disrespectful. Arrogant. Sound familiar? Malik nodded slowly. They tried to erase my record, Monroe continued. Said I must have hacked the school database. So I fought back. Not with lawyers, with visibility. He paused, eyes glinting. I got a mentor back then. Now I'm doing the same. I want you to go public with something they can't ignore. Malik raised an eyebrow. Public how? Monroe grinned. We're organizing a live event. Virtual, but big. I've gathered physicists, professors, PhDs, grad students. We're calling it The Mind They Tried to Fail. You'll be the centerpiece. One live problem, no prep. You solve it, and we stream it. Malik blinked. That sounds like pressure. It's not pressure if you're already living under it, Monroe said. And you are. Every day. This just flips the script. Malik hesitated. What if I mess up? Monroe leaned in. You won't. Because this time, we choose the equation, and you've already solved harder ones in your notebooks. He paused. But before we go forward, there's something I want to tell you about why this matters more than you think. Monroe pulled out a worn manila envelope and held it to the camera. This is my file. From high school. Sealed and sanitized. But I fought to get a copy years later. He opened it and read aloud. Displays combative intellectualism. Challenges authority. Shows signs of self-inflated academic identity. He looked at Malik. They said the same things about me, and every other gifted black student I've mentored. He set the file down. This isn't about you messing up. This is about them needing you to. Malik felt his chest tighten. I didn't want to be famous, he said quietly. I didn't either, Monroe said. But we don't get to hide forever. Not when hiding keeps the next Malik silent. There was silence for a beat. Then Malik nodded. Slowly, like a storm beginning to settle. I'll do it. That night, Malik and Monroe stayed on for 2 more hours. They didn't rehearse. They brainstormed, talked through strategy, framed the event not as a performance, but as truth made visible. Monroe explained how the problem would be selected by a panel of professors. No school involvement, no teacher interference. Live streamed across YouTube, Twitch, and academic circles. Mariah entered halfway through the call. She didn't say much, but her eyes shone when she heard the plan. When she heard someone speak about her son like he was rare, not risky. The next morning, Malik returned to school, with something different in his walk. Not arrogance, not defiance, just clarity. Lena caught up to him outside homeroom. You good? He nodded. Better than I've been. You're planning something, aren't you? He smirked. You'll see. Inside the classroom, Mr. Denton was back on assignment, this time substituting for chemistry. He saw Malik enter, but said nothing. Malik didn't care. He took his seat, opened his notebook, and at the top of the page he wrote, "Let them watch." 2 days later, Monroe emailed him the final confirmation. Event scheduled Friday 8 p.m., streamed via Princeton Open Lab channel. Guest moderators Dr. Lin Jiang, MIT, Dr. Thomas Kirk, Stanford, Dr. Yolanda Ruiz, Howard. Attached was the flyer. It showed Malik's silhouette, not his face, with bold lettering. The mind they tried to fail. Malik stared at it for a long time, then pressed share. It was out. No turning back. The mentor arranges a private challenge, broadcast live to thousands. The Friday night of the live stream felt electric. Malik sat at his desk, facing a blank sheet of paper. His laptop camera was angled slightly upward, catching the glow of his desk lamp and the quiet intensity in his eyes. On screen, viewers began flooding in by the hundreds, then thousands. Princeton Open Lab had promoted it all week. The mind they tried to fail, featuring Malik James. It wasn't just a stream, it was a statement. The chat exploded with greetings and questions. Is this the Rivington kid? He's the one who exposed the teacher, right? Let's see if he's legit. In a smaller Zoom window beside the stream, 3 moderators watched silently. Dr. Lin Zhang from MIT, Dr. Thomas Kirk from Stanford, and Dr. Yolanda Ruiz from Howard. Dr. Jalen Monroe was also there, nodding proudly, his voice calm and affirming. Malik, Monroe said into the stream, we've selected a real-world vector field optimization problem. It's rarely solved outside of grad-level labs. No tricks, no filters. You take it on however you want. Malik nodded once. I'm ready. The problem appeared on screen. A dense, winding equation involving multivariable calculus, gravitational interference in a 3-body orbital system, and time-dependent resistance variables. The kind of question that even doctoral candidates pause before attempting. Malik read it once, then again, and then he began writing. The live stream chat slowed. Everyone stopped typing. What they saw was not just calculation, it was fluency. He moved through coordinate systems, restructured matrices, and broke the problem down into smaller visual blocks. He didn't rush, didn't stall, just precise, steady work. 1 part intuition, 1 part genius, all authentic. He solved it in just under 17 minutes. When he looked up, the screen was filled with stunned silence. Dr. Ruiz blinked. I've taught this course for 12 years and I've never seen a student reduce that system that fast. Dr. Zhang nodded slowly. And without simulation tools, just raw logic. Dr. Kirk leaned forward. Malik, do you realize what you just did? Malik exhaled. I translated it into a system I could see. That's all. The chat reignited like wildfire. Genius confirmed. This kid's a monster. How was his school not supporting him? Protect Malik at all costs. The stream ended with a quiet thank you from Malik. No theatrics. No bragging. Just a quiet, humble exit. But what came next was not celebration. By Monday, news outlets had picked up the stream. Clips circulated online. New headlines appeared. Black teen solves grad-level physics problem live. Student once suspended now celebrated by Ivy League scientists. Malik arrived at school that morning, not as a student, but a symbol, and not everyone welcomed that. Administrators didn't mention the stream. His principal avoided eye contact, but the hostility had evolved. That afternoon, his mother received an email marked confidential. Subject raised student behavior review, Malik James. It read, due to recent public attention, the Rivington School Board will conduct a formal review of Malik James's academic records and extracurricular involvement to ensure compliance with district standards. This is not a disciplinary inquiry. It is a procedural audit. Please do not discuss the review publicly at this time. Mariah reread it twice. A procedural audit? They weren't investigating the school. They were investigating him. She forwarded the email to Jalen Monroe, with 1 line. They're coming for him. Jalen responded instantly. They're trying to delegitimize what they can't disprove. 2 days later, Malik was called into a small conference room, seated inside 3 district officials, none of whom he'd met before. One held a folder filled with printed screenshots, his Reddit posts, science forum replies, even physics jokes he'd shared. Malik, said the man in the center, we're here to clarify some recent academic claims. For transparency. Malik stayed quiet. Did you receive outside help on the live stream problem?
No.
Did anyone provide you with a solution beforehand? No. They exchanged glances. What about the Reddit forum Physics Under 18? Are you active there? Yes. Under which username? Velocikalk. The woman beside him looked surprised. You've posted solutions to problems typically reserved for university students. Malik nodded. I solve problems for fun. The third official leaned forward. Are you aware that submitting advanced solutions without attribution could violate academic code if used in coursework? I don't use them in class. I write them in my own time. The tension in the room was quiet but sharp. When Malik left, he felt like he'd sat through an interrogation, not an inquiry. That night, a parent email chain surfaced. Subject: safety concerns at Rivington High. One line stood out. We must ask whether this sudden fame is distracting to our learning environment. It's not about race. It's about order. Malik's name was never mentioned directly. It didn't have to be. Mariah read it aloud to him. He didn't flinch, didn't comment. But later, alone in his room, he wrote 4 words at the top of his notebook. Order was never neutral. He stared at the phrase for a long time, then flipped the page. The district launches a quiet investigation into him. 3 days into the district's so-called audit, Malik noticed a change in how people looked at him. Not with curiosity, not even with the unease he'd gotten used to, but with calculation. In classrooms, teachers whispered when he passed. In the front office, clerical staff stiffened as he approached. He could feel it, a quiet campaign to make his presence feel conditional. They hadn't suspended him. They hadn't accused him. But they had opened the door to suspicion and let it flood in. Malik's transcript, previously untouched by controversy, was suddenly in question. His counselor, Mrs. Logan, called him in again, her tone colder now, eyes scanning her screen as if searching for hidden answers. Malik, she said, we're reevaluating some of your records. There seemed to be inconsistencies in how your courses were credited. He furrowed his brow. Inconsistencies? There's some confusion about the physics courses you've taken. Specifically, the independent study. It's not showing properly in the district portal. Malik leaned forward. That was approved. You signed off on it yourself. I understand, she replied. But now that there's more attention on your academic profile, the board has asked us to verify everything. He sat back, stunned. Nobody ever asked this when I was just another quiet kid. She didn't deny it. She just gave a tight smile and clicked to the next screen. At home, Malik told his mother everything. They're digging through my files like I faked my GPA, he said, pacing the living room. Mariah stood by the kitchen island, reading an email from the district. Her face hardened as she scrolled. They're asking for documentation of your elementary school gifted testing, she said. From 5th grade? She nodded. And attendance records. From 7 years ago. He shook his head. No one's ever questioned those. Mariah slammed the laptop shut. They are now. That week, Malik heard rumors floating through the halls. That he had a private tutor feeding him answers. That his family had paid for test prep services. That he had somehow cheated on standardized tests, despite never scoring below the 95th percentile in math since middle school. Meanwhile, other students who didn't look like him, coasted through without scrutiny. One white student bragged during lunch about hiring a college admissions coach who edited every essay. No teacher blinked. No board investigation followed. Malik noticed every double standard, every glance that lingered too long, every form that needed extra verification. One morning he was pulled out of homeroom. The district's lead academic auditor wanted to meet with him. In the conference room, the woman greeted him with a rehearsed smile and a thick folder. I want to talk about your Princeton application, she said. What about it? It lists advanced coursework we don't see reflected in our system. For example, independent study, theoretical mechanics. Who oversaw that? Dr. Huxley. She raised an eyebrow. He didn't mention it in his teacher summary. Because it wasn't part of his regular class. He just signed the approval. She didn't write that down. She flipped to another page. And this publication you listed on arXiv, did you write that entirely yourself? Yes. No co-author. No. She nodded, lips pursed. We'll need a written statement confirming that. He blinked. You think I plagiarized a physics paper? We just need to be thorough. When he got home, Malik threw his backpack on the floor and slumped into the couch. They think I'm lying, he said. Mariah stood by the window, scrolling her phone. Her expression darkened. They're not investigating your work, she said. They're investigating your legitimacy. He looked up. Same thing, isn't it? No, she said. Not when your classmates are never asked to prove themselves. 2 days later, Mariah walked into the district office unannounced. She requested access to Malik's student records. The front desk clerk hesitated, then complied. What she wasn't supposed to receive, but did, was a file attachment that came bundled in the internal review folder, a chain of internal emails. She didn't recognize all the names, but one thread caught her eye. Subject, Malik James. Concerns. He's clearly gifted, but something about this feels off. Is it possible he's receiving outside academic coaching? We can't verify the originality of his independent work. We should be careful how this reflects on the school's image. The press is watching.
Is there a risk of this escalating into a racial controversy?
Let's keep the inquiry quiet for now. We can always walk it back later. Mariah's hand shook as she scrolled. They weren't investigating malpractice. They were managing optics. That night, she printed the email chain and placed it on Malik's desk. He read in silence, shoulders tightening with every line. They were always going to find a way to erase it, he said. They just needed a paper trail. Mariah crossed her arms. Then we'll give them a paper storm. His mother uncovers emails between staff that were never meant to be seen. For most of his life, Malik had learned to survive by shrinking. He was never the loudest voice in the room. He never demanded attention. He earned his grades, filled his notebooks, and left spaces before speaking in class, not out of fear, but to avoid stepping on landmines he couldn't always see coming. He thought, maybe, that staying quiet was enough to stay safe. But that illusion was gone now. The school had dragged him into the spotlight, not because he asked for it, but because he refused to bend. The moment he solved that problem at the board, when he corrected Mr. Denton calmly and with precision, the fuse had been lit. And now the fire wasn't just academic, it was political. The internal emails had changed everything. When Lena's screenshot leaked online, quietly posted by an anonymous student ally on Reddit, it took only hours for it to catch wind. The file labeled Behavior Watch List, internal only, began circulating on Black student advocacy pages, then high school activism accounts, then national education reform threads. Within 24 hours, a firestorm was brewing. Twitter exploded. A gifted Black teen gets placed on a behavior watch list for being smart? Malik James is not a threat. He's a prodigy. Rivington High needs to be held accountable. Mariah tried to prepare him. The narrative is shifting fast. You have to be ready for what comes with this. I didn't ask for any of it, he said quietly. I know. But they made you visible. Now it's time to decide what they'll see. By the following Monday, something happened Malik never imagined. Students walked out. It started with a single message in a private group chat. We should do something. Not just repost. Action. The next morning, at exactly 10:15 a.m., over 200 students left class. They flooded the courtyard wearing black hoodies and carrying signs. Smart Neil suspicious. Let Malik learn. Gifted, not guilty. Some had never spoken to Malik. Others had once laughed when he raised his hand. But now they marched in solidarity. Because what happened to him had touched something deeper. A fear that brilliance, when wrapped in blackness, was always going to be treated like rebellion. Inside, teachers watched through windows. Security hovered uneasily at the edges of the crowd. Mr. Denton stood at the corner of the hallway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When the principal, Mr. Landon, stepped outside to address the students, boos broke out. A chant formed. Say his name. Say his name. He didn't. He turned and walked back inside.
Malik didn't attend the walkout. He stayed in the library, quietly refreshing the news feeds on his laptop. His hands trembled as he scrolled.
Mariah had told him not to engage online, but that morning she changed her mind. You need to see it, she said. They're not silencing this. The screenshots, the emails, the audit documents, the live stream clip. All of it had formed into something undeniable. Malik James was no longer just a student. He was a symbol, and symbols were hard to erase. By midweek, local news outlets had picked up the story. Mariah agreed to one interview with a journalist she trusted, someone who had covered education equity issues in the past. Her name was Camille Sayers, a sharp, unapologetic Black woman known for cutting through soft focus narratives. She interviewed Malik and Mariah in their home. No makeup crew, no scripted talking points. She just asked questions and let the silence do the work. Why do you think the school questioned your abilities? She asked. Malik stared at the floor for a moment. Because they couldn't believe someone like me could be that good. And what do you mean by someone like you? Black, quiet, from a single-parent home, not part of the STEM club, not from money, not in their image of success. Camille didn't interrupt. She just nodded and let him continue. They didn't see me as gifted. They saw me as glitching the system. The segment aired that Friday. By Saturday, it had over 500,000 views. But Camille wasn't done. She had filed a public records request for internal communications from the Rivington district. It took weeks, but she got them. And buried in the files was the real bombshell. An email from Mr. Denton to the principal, dated the day after Malik's board demonstration. This student may pose a reputational risk if we continue allowing him to challenge faculty. He's bright, but unmanageable. We should consider documenting his attitude before it becomes more public. These types of students often spiral if not disciplined early. These types. Camille's expose dropped on a Sunday morning. Headline: These types of students. How Rivington High tried to silence a black prodigy. The article was sharp, detailed, unforgiving. It laid out every twist of Malik's journey, from humiliation to viral brilliance, from suspension to secret watch lists, from praise online to suspicion offline. It ended with Malik's words from the interview. They never questioned my math, just my right to solve it. By Monday, the school could no longer pretend. Protests formed outside district offices. Alumni wrote letters. College professors penned op-eds. Rivington issued a statement. It was vague, careful, polished. We are aware of recent reports concerning student treatment and are committed to evaluating our internal policies. We do not tolerate discrimination of any kind. But it was too late. Mr. Denton's name was now known, not just to the students, but to the country. His old tweets resurfaced. His history of writing students up for tone violations. His comments on teacher forums about maintaining control in diverse classrooms. He was placed on administrative leave within 20. But the damage to Malik was not undone. That night, Malik sat by his bedroom window, the glow of his phone lighting his face. His inbox was flooded. Reporters, students from across the country, offers to speak at webinars, invitations to academic programs. Maria knocked gently. You okay? He turned. I don't know. You made it through. He shook his head. I made it visible. That's not the same. She sat beside him. You were quiet for years. Because you thought it kept you safe. But now they've seen you. And they can't unsee you. I didn't want to be an activist. You didn't have to be. They forced your hand. A moment passed between them. Then Malik picked up a sheet of paper. It was the problem from the live stream now printed, annotated, and ready. He turned it over and wrote, "What's next?" A journalist publishes an expose, naming the teacher. Mr. Denton was gone. The district released a 2-sentence statement, announcing his temporary administrative leave pending investigation, careful not to admit wrongdoing or acknowledge the viral expose. No apology, no accountability, just absence. But absence wasn't justice. If anything, it created a new vacuum, one quickly filled with confusion, misinformation, and fear. In the days after Camille Sayers' article blew up, Malik's life became even less his own. News vans parked across the street. Neighbors watched from behind blinds. Some waved supportively, others didn't wave at all. Inside Rivington High, things didn't get better. They got colder. Teachers tiptoed around him. Peers whispered less, but watched more. Some avoided him entirely, scared of being pulled into controversy. Others tried to comfort him with awkward comments. You're really brave, man. I didn't know all that stuff was happening to you. You should be proud. You're like famous. Malik didn't feel famous. He felt dissected. The district's legal department sent the James family a formal letter requesting a cooperative meeting to discuss Malik's educational standing and future. The tone was polite. The intent was clear. Mariah refused. No more closed doors, she said. If they want to talk, it happens on the record. So she called someone she hadn't spoken to in years. A friend from Howard Law. Camille connected her with a civil rights firm in D.C. Within days, an attorney named Jasmine Miles was reviewing every email, every grade report, every internal document they'd collected. And Jasmine didn't hesitate. This isn't about one racist teacher, she said during their first Zoom call. It's about systemic harm, coded language, educational gatekeeping. If they want to fight, we'll give them one in federal court. The backlash came fast. Within 72 hours of the district learning that a lawsuit was imminent, Rivington High's leadership changed tactics. They began quietly rewriting internal narratives, likely preparing for legal exposure. A new counselor, Mr. Rivera, suddenly appeared to support Malik's emotional transition. An anonymous staff survey circulated, asking vague questions like, have you ever felt threatened by accelerated students? A memo went out to teachers urging them to demonstrate fairness and grace when evaluating student behavior in high-pressure times.
The hypocrisy stung.
They're papering over rot, Mariah said, and praying we'll back down. But they didn't. Jasmine's team uncovered patterns. 10 years' worth of internal reports showing disproportionate disciplinary actions against black male students in advanced placement classes. A trend of lower participation grades, given to black students with otherwise perfect test scores. Language in teacher evaluations that flagged black boys as hyper-assertive and emotionally disengaged, terms not used in any white student records. They don't just doubt you, Jasmine told Malik. They document their doubt so they can defend it later. Malik sat quietly, absorbing it all. This isn't just about me, is it? Yeah. Jasmine shook her head. No. It's about every kid who came before you, and everyone who'll come after. The media narrative shifted again. National outlets picked up the case. Think pieces appeared in The Atlantic, Vox and The Washington Post. Panel shows debated the school's responsibility. Pundits questioned whether gifted programs unintentionally penalized black students. Some called for policy reform. Others, predictably, accused Malik's family of playing victim. Camille stayed close to the story. She wrote a second piece, From Genius to Target, How Institutions Penalize Black Excellence. It hit harder than the first. She interviewed former Rivington students, who described eerily similar treatment. One girl, now in college, recalled being pulled from AP classes and moved to general education for behavioral balance. Another boy said he was told by a vice principal, "You're too smart to be acting this cocky." Camille ended the piece with a line that sent shockwaves. This isn't just about a mistake. It's about maintenance, a system maintained to reward compliance and punish brilliance when it wears the wrong skin. Under pressure, the district held a closed-door board meeting. They invited Malik and his mother to speak. Mariah declined. Instead, Jasmine delivered a formal statement and handed over the pre-suit notification. The room went quiet. One board member, an older white man who hadn't spoken the entire meeting, finally asked, "What damages are you seeking?" Jasmine looked him in the eye. "Every one you've caused." 2 days later, the official lawsuit was filed. James v. Rivington, Unified School District. Allegations included discriminatory academic profiling, retaliatory administrative behavior, emotional distress due to institutional gaslighting, educational sabotage via biased policy enforcement. The suit cited federal violations under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and equal protection clauses. Social media erupted. So did the school board. Rivington's public relations department scrambled. They issued a carefully worded press release. While we respect the rights of families to seek justice through legal avenues, we stand by our commitment to equity and excellence. We are proud of all our students. The word Malik was never mentioned. Inside Malik's home, the mood was quiet but fierce. He wasn't scared anymore. He was angry. And underneath the anger, a deeper resolve. "They thought I'd go back to silence," he told Jasmine. "But I've seen too much now." She nodded. That's how change begins. But just as momentum built, another twist. A leaked document appeared online, a confidential strategy memo from the district's legal counsel. It outlined possible defense tactics, discredit Malik's emotional state, raise questions about his public comment, subpoena his private notebooks, consider countersuit for defamation if public pressure grows. Mariah read it, stunned. "They're not just trying to win," she said. "They're trying to destroy him." Malik looked at her, voice quiet but unshaken. Then we hit back louder. "A lawsuit is filed, and it's about to go federal." The courtroom was colder than Malik expected. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. White walls, mahogany benches, fluorescent lights overhead that buzzed faintly when the room got too quiet. On one side, Malik, his mother Mariah, and their legal team led by Jasmine Miles. On the other, a row of suited representatives from the Rivington Unified School District, flanked by their attorneys and a risk assessment consultant. This wasn't the final trial. It was a preliminary hearing, a chance for both sides to present arguments before the case moved into discovery. Still, every eye in the room held weight, and none more than the judge, Judge Adrian L. Whitmore, a meticulous black man with silver hair and a reputation for balance. He watched each side with an unwavering expression, as though scanning for contradictions before a word had even been spoken. The gallery behind them was full. Reporters, law students, community advocates, quiet supporters. and skeptics. Malik sat with his hands folded, his posture perfect, but beneath the surface, his nerves vibrated like tuning forks. He was 17, sitting in federal court, not because he broke a law, but because he dared to be better than what they expected. Jasmine began with composure and precision. She recounted the emails, the audit, the behavior watch list, the disproportionate disciplinary policies. Your Honor, she said, standing before the court, this case is not just about academic integrity. It is about the weaponization of doubt. A school system that could not fathom a black child solving the kind of problems it didn't prepare him for. And when he did, he was punished. Rivington's attorney, a lean man with thin glasses named Mr. Greeley, pushed back. There is no evidence of racial bias, he said. Our investigation shows no deliberate attempt to suppress Mr. James' abilities. Any review of his records was routine and triggered by irregularities that under any student profile would have warranted follow-up. He used the word student instead of Malik's name. Repeatedly, he pointed to a slide showing standardized testing benchmarks. Mr. James' math aptitude was strong, yes, but not demonstrably exceptional, within district rankings, until the live stream brought his name into national conversation. Jasmine stood up calmly. So he wasn't exceptional until you realized the public thought he was, Greeley objected. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. But his eyes didn't leave Malik. Malik had not planned to speak, but Jasmine leaned over just before the recess and whispered, they need to hear your mind, not just your pain. So when the judge invited student testimony, Malik rose. The courtroom seemed to lean forward collectively. He walked to the stand, adjusted the mic, and spoke clearly. I never wanted to embarrass anyone, he began. When Mr. Denton called on me, I thought it was just another question. I didn't know it would be used against me. He paused. I've loved physics since I was 10. I taught myself calculus when my school didn't offer it. I didn't do that to impress anyone. I did it because I see the world differently. And for the first time, I thought maybe the world saw me back. A silence followed. Then the quiet click of a pen, a journalist writing it down. After a short recess, the unexpected happened. Jasmine stood and announced, Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to call an expert panel. The judge raised an eyebrow. A panel? She nodded. Physicists, educators, scholars from leading institutions who have reviewed Malik's work. The courtroom door opened, and in walked 4 individuals, all professors, from Princeton, MIT, Stanford, Howard. Their credentials were unassailable. Dr. Jalen Monroe led them. Behind him, Dr. Lin Zhang, Dr. Yolanda Ruiz, and Dr. Thomas Kirk, all of whom had either interacted with or evaluated Malik's live stream performance. Jalen took the stand first. Your Honor, I've taught at Columbia and Princeton for over 15 years. I've mentored students who now work at NASA and CERN, and I can say with confidence, what Malik demonstrated was not luck, it was fluency. He went on. He restructured a vector field problem using methods I don't teach until graduate seminar. And he did it live, under pressure, without software or assistance. If this child were white, and from a prep school in Connecticut, you wouldn't be hearing this case. You'd be offering him scholarships. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge let it sit. Next was Dr. Ruiz, a veteran in STEM education policy. She brought data. Charts comparing how gifted black students were disproportionately labeled difficult or aggressive in high schools across the country. This case is not isolated, she said. It is a mirror, and in that mirror you will see generations of talent buried beneath suspicion. She held up Malik's printout from the live stream problem. This isn't a disruption. It's a declaration, a warning that maybe, just maybe, the gatekeepers were wrong. Mr. Greeley tried to counter. These individuals may be experts in their fields, but they do not represent the daily pressures and liabilities faced by public school educators, tasked with maintaining academic standards and discipline. He turned to Malik. Do you deny that your visibility caused disruption in the school community? Malik replied without hesitation. If visibility is disruptive, maybe the problem is what people are seeing. Jasmine rose again. Your Honor, these testimonies make one thing clear. Malik James is not an anomaly. He is a casualty of systems designed to elevate comfort over truth. The judge nodded slowly, digesting every word. Then he said, Before we proceed, I want one more thing. He turned to the district's table. I want to see the student's full academic record. All of it. No filters. No summaries. I want to see what Malik James has done, not what others have said about him. A stillness fell. The defense attorney adjusted his tie. Mariah gripped Malik's hand under the table. The judge demands to see the student's full academic record, unfiltered. His record showed brilliance from day one, but they never bothered looking. Word count. The courtroom reconvened the next morning. The judge's request echoed in every mind. I want to see the student's full academic record, unfiltered. What followed wasn't just a file drop. It was an unsealing. Rivington Unified's legal team handed over a digital archive, test scores, teacher evaluations, assignment logs, science fair entries, math competition results. Every shred of Malik's scholastic footprint, from kindergarten to present, now entered the public record. The documents were projected onto the courtroom screen, line by line, year by year. And what unfolded was damning. Malik's brilliance had been there all along. In first grade, he tested at the 98th percentile in logical reasoning. By third grade, his teacher noted, Malik finishes logic puzzles ahead of his classmates and explains his answers in diagrams. In sixth grade, he submitted a self-designed algorithm to sort prime numbers and was the only student in the district to qualify for the state math Olympiad, though his school never filed the paperwork to register him. In seventh, he built a homemade barometer that tracked pressure changes with over 85% accuracy, but was disqualified from the science fair because it lacked visual appeal. In eighth, he independently completed a high school-level algebra course online. The district portal marked the course incomplete due to a clerical error. No one corrected it. In ninth grade, he submitted a research proposal on Newtonian mechanics and nonlinear acceleration, denied for being too advanced for scope. Every year the pattern repeated. Exceptional performance, followed by institutional neglect. Jasmine scrolled through the pages, reading them aloud like an indictment. Malik James, 5th grade. Strong verbal reasoning. Demonstrates mastery of abstract patterns. Recommended for GATE. Never enrolled. Malik James, 6th grade. Exceeds math benchmarks. In-class projects. Demonstrate independent learning. Peer mentors report confusion at his level. Translation. Too smart to manage. Malik James, 8th grade. Inconsistent engagement. Work submitted independently, often ahead of schedule. May require redirection. That's code for outpaced the curriculum. She paused. Your Honor, these aren't gaps in Malik's record. These are gaps in the system's ability, or willingness to recognize him. The judge studied the screen. His jaw tightened. Why wasn't this presented earlier? Mr. Greeley, visibly flustered, replied, we didn't believe it was relevant to the specific incident. Not relevant? The judge repeated. He looked toward Malik. You were solving graduate-level physics problems, but they never even enrolled you in gifted programs. Malik shook his head slowly. No one ever asked. In the gallery, reactions shifted from quiet curiosity to audible outrage. Parents gasped. Former students nodded grimly. Reporters scribbled faster. Jasmine turned to the judge. This isn't an oversight. It's erasure. Death by 1,000 doubts. Then came the twist. Among the documents was a certificate, unsigned forgotten awarded to Malik, in 6th grade for most promising young scholar in mathematics. It had never been given to him. Another, a recommendation letter drafted by a former math teacher who'd since retired. She wrote, Malik James is a once-in-a-generation mind. I only hope the district doesn't lose him to neglect. It had been saved in a drafts folder, never sent. Camille Sayers sat in the back row stunned. She typed furiously into her notes.
This wasn't just injustice, it was betrayal.
The school hadn't just failed Malik recently. They'd been failing him for years, quietly, systematically, with all the tools of bureaucracy. She texted her editor, change headline. It's bigger than we thought. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Then it happened. A man stood up in the back of the gallery, well-dressed, mid-50s, carrying a briefcase. He approached the bench with hesitation, handed a sealed envelope to the bailiff, and whispered something to Jasmine. She opened the envelope, blinked, and turned to Malik. You might want to sit down, she whispered. He stayed standing. She passed him the letter. His eyes scanned the first line, then stopped. It was from Caltech. Official letterhead, signed by the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions. We've reviewed Malik James' academic history and recent public demonstrations in recognition of his potential and to correct a wrong we did not commit, but cannot ignore. We are offering Malik James early admission with full academic scholarship and housing. Gasps. Tears welled in Mariah's eyes. But Malik didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, he whispered, "They see me now, but where were they before?" The judge requested a short recess. As the courtroom emptied, Jasmine leaned over and said, "This offer doesn't change the case. It proves it. They wanted to erase him," she added, "but the truth won't stay buried." Malik nodded slowly, his voice steady. "I don't just want an offer," he said. "I want the system to answer for everyone they never bothered to see." A top university offers him something no one expected. In just 3 weeks, Malik James went from a near suspension to a national headline. Not because of scandal, but because the country finally looked up and saw him. After the courtroom revelations and the Caltech letter, everything changed. Overnight, the tone of news coverage shifted. Malik was no longer the student under suspicion. He was now being profiled as the genius they tried to erase. Local stations ran timelines of the case. National outlets launched full segments. The Washington Post published a Sunday feature titled "Hidden in Plain Sight: How Malik James Exposed a System Built on Doubt." Late-night talk shows referenced him. College prep forums circulated his story under threads like "Black Excellence Under Siege." And yet, Malik didn't do a single TV appearance. He didn't sit for interviews. He didn't capitalize on fame. He went back to school. The same chair. The same lunch line. The same quiet walk between classes. He sat with Lena. He stayed after hours in the physics lab. He kept reading papers beyond the curriculum. The attention never distracted him from what he loved most: learning. But now, people watched differently. What the media hadn't expected was how many Malik Jameses there were. Dozens, then hundreds, of students began sharing their own stories online. A viral hashtag emerged. "Nye, I was overlooked too." A black girl in Minnesota wrote about being told not to apply for advanced chemistry because it might be overwhelming. A boy from Detroit posted a photo of his elementary report card, where a teacher described him as smart but suspicious. Even adults chimed in: engineers, researchers, analysts, remembering how their curiosity was once treated as defiance. Malik had become a symbol, not just of brilliance, but of stolen potential. The school scrambled. Rivington High launched an Equity Excellence Initiative, complete with brochures, email blasts, and a redesigned website banner showing diverse students smiling in front of science equipment. It rang hollow. Students knew it. Parents knew it. Even some teachers couldn't hide their embarrassment. The administration announced Student Spotlight Week and tried to center Malik again, but this time he declined the invitation. "Spotlights are temporary," he said to Lena. "Change has to stay." Lena nodded. "They used to ignore you. Now they want to own you." He looked out the window. "They never saw me as valuable until I embarrassed them." Colleges competed quietly behind the scenes, though Caltech had made the first move. MIT, Stanford, Columbia, and Princeton all sent direct letters, some with full scholarships, others with research fellowships. One even offered to name a freshman physics program after him. Malik considered each carefully, but didn't rush. To him, this wasn't a chance to escape. It was a chance to decide where he'd be safest to grow. His mother, Mariah, reminded him, "You don't owe them gratitude for finally recognizing you. You owe yourself the peace to choose what's right." He folded the Princeton letter slowly. "I'm not rushing." One night, Camille Sayers called. Her new documentary titled Proof: The Malik James Story had just wrapped production. She invited him and Mariah to a private screening. They sat in the darkened room, the screen flickering images of test scores, news headlines, courtroom stills, and quotes. The final line on screen: "Some students disrupt class. Others disrupt the system." Malik James did both, without ever raising his voice. Mariah wiped her eyes. Malik sat in silence. "I didn't want to be a story," he said softly. Camille looked at him. "That's what makes it powerful." Graduation approached. With it came uncertainty about how the ceremony would be handled, who would speak, and whether Malik would even attend. He hadn't decided until the last week. "I think I need to go," he told Mariah. "Not for the school, for everyone who never got to walk across that stage." Mariah smiled. "Make sure you wear the cords they tried to deny you." The day of the ceremony arrived. The gymnasium was packed. Cameras lined the back walls. Security was higher than usual, not because of threats, but because of attention. The principal, Mr. Landon, gave the opening remarks. His speech danced around the controversy, using phrases like, "a year of growth," and "unprecedented learning." When it was time to call names, Malik walked across the stage slowly. The room erupted in a standing ovation that lasted longer than any other student. Some teachers clapped with hesitation. Others, especially the ones who had quietly supported him, clapped with pride. He took his diploma, shook hands, and just as he turned to leave the stage, the MC said something unexpected. "Please remain seated for one final speaker." Invited by the graduating class. Whispers filled the gym. Lena leaned forward in her seat. Malik paused mid-step. Then a familiar voice echoed from the side door. "Thank you for allowing me the chance to speak." Heads turned. Gasps followed. It was Dr. Jalen Monroe, the Princeton physicist who had testified on Malik's behalf in court. Graduation day arrives, and someone unexpected takes the stage to speak. The moment Mr. Denton stepped onto the graduation stage, the room held its breath. There was no music, no announcement. Just the sound of shoes on polished wood, and the disbelief rippling through the crowd. A few gasped. Some whispered his name. Others simply watched, frozen. Even the principal looked stunned. This was not part of the program. Not cleared. Not invited. Malik turned slowly to face the man who once mocked him in front of the entire class, who had started this spiral of humiliation and disbelief. Mr. Denton held a small folded paper in his hands. He didn't approach the mic. He stopped halfway, took a long breath, and then unexpectedly turned to Malik. "You don't have to forgive me," he said, voice low but steady, echoing into the mic anyway. "But I needed to say this. I was wrong, and you were everything I couldn't understand. That's not your fault. That's mine." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He continued. "I thought control meant power, but you showed the world what real power looks like when knowledge stands taller than ego." And then he left. Just as quickly as he appeared. No applause followed. Only silence. A raw, unsettled silence. Malik didn't speak. He didn't nod. He simply turned back to the podium and waited for the room to breathe again. The rest of the ceremony felt like a blur. Names were called. Diplomas were handed out. Cameras flashed. But no moment came close to matching the magnitude of Malik's presence. When his name was called again to officially receive his diploma, something shifted. People didn't just clap. They rose. All of them. Students, teachers, families. Even the judge from his case, seated quietly in the back row.
And the applause didn't stop.
It built, swelled, rolled through the auditorium like a wave. By the time Malik reached the center of the stage, his name wasn't just being announced. It was being chanted. "Malik! Malik! Malik!" Over and over. A name they once ignored. A name they once doubted. Now roared like an anthem. Mariah stood near the front, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jasmine beside her, hand to her heart. Camille captured it all, from the wings of the stage, knowing this moment would become the final image of her documentary. This wasn't just a graduation. It was a reckoning, a redirection, a repair. After the ceremony, Malik stepped outside into the courtyard, now flooded with press and supporters. But he didn't pose. He didn't linger. He walked toward the edge of the crowd, where a cluster of younger students waited. One small boy, no older than 12, held a notebook clutched tightly to his chest. He looked up at Malik, wide-eyed. "Can I be like you?" Malik knelt down, meeting the boy eye to eye.
"You already are," he said.
Then handed him his own graduation cap. The story didn't end at graduation. Within a month, federal education departments began reevaluating gifted student criteria across multiple districts. Rivington's superintendent resigned quietly. State legislators introduced the James Reform Bill, requiring transparent gifted testing, anti-bias training, and public accountability reports from every school. Malik's name, once buried in a behavior report, was now attached to permanent policy. His Caltech enrollment was postponed by 1 year at his request. He wanted to spend the next year teaching math and physics workshops to underrepresented youth in public schools. He called it the Visible Genius Project. His tagline, "They tried to erase me. Now I draw the map." The final scene in Camille's documentary showed Malik standing before a chalkboard, surrounded by students. He wasn't lecturing. He was listening, then solving, then stepping back, letting others solve beside him. In a voiceover, Camille said, "In a world that tried to silence his mind, Malik James answered with something louder than protest proof. And in doing so, He redefined what it means to be seen. Back in Rivington, a mural was painted near the school's entrance. It showed a black boy with a chalkboard halo behind him, numbers and symbols forming the arc of a crown. Below it, one line in bold. They tried to erase him, so the world wrote him in ink. As he raises his diploma, the crowd chants a name they tried to erase. If you've ever been doubted for how you look instead of what you can do, if you've ever watched brilliance be punished instead of praised, then you know this story isn't just Malik's, it's all of ours. Type yes if you believe talent should never be silenced. Subscribe if this broke your heart and opened your eyes.